What is up, guys? I'm Nathan Walz. I'm a mitochondrial health coach, and I'm back to talk with you about quantum biology. And quantum biology, it's really the where physics meets biology. And with this podcast, I really want to challenge the way you think about your health and the modern wisdom for people that are health focused today. The focus is really on diet, exercise, supplements. There's some recent talk of mitochondria. A lot of the people out there talking about mitochondria, the focus really is really on supplements, and they're missing like a very key part of that mitochondria, or of really what optimizes your mitochondria. So we're going to talk about that tonight, and really a key takeaway for you that I want you to remember this and to understand is that physics dictates biology. So diet, exercise, supplements, those are all biology focused, but at the fundamental level of what really drives health or drives disease, it's the physics that drives biology. So we're going to talk about that physics tonight, and I'm going to delve into my story of how I had a downward decline in my health over a decade. I found out that I had Lyme disease. I got treated for it. I got much worse. And this actually led me to this discovery of quantum biology. I used it. We're going to talk about what happened, reverse all the symptoms I had, and to really get back to have thriving health and be able to help a lot of people. Also reverse things that they've done a lot of things right, but they haven't got the results that they're looking for. But back to the point of physics dictates biology. I want to share an analogy with you. And physics is really the foundation of your health. And biology is more if you think of a house, biology is really more the siding. So if you have a house and the siding's kind of cracking or the painting is chipped and you repaint that house, it's going to look nicer. But if you have a foundation that's crumbling, until you address that foundation, your house is at some point it's going to collapse. So your foundation for your health is physics, and it's really the light, the environment that you expose yourself to. And for many years of my life, I exposed myself to the wrong light, to the wrong environment. And that really led to my downward decline in my health. And starting in my early 30s, I started having fatigue. I was just in the beginning, it was occasional tiredness. Over time, it got worse. Occasionally, I wouldn't sleep well. I had digestive issues. Then I started having more neurological symptoms. So things like brain fog and just small tasks that used to take me 5-10 minutes are now taking 15, 20, 30 minutes because my brain just wasn't functioning the way it was supposed to function. I had digestive issues, and this went on over a period of 10 years. And every year I would go to my doctor, and my doctor would run all the standard blood tests, and everything always came back in the normal range. And he chalked it up to me getting older and stress. Now, the stress part was true. I did have a stressful job, but I was in my early 30s, so I didn't feel that I was that old where I should be dealing with these different symptoms. But I didn't know what else to do. I ate really well for the most part. I did on the weekends, I kind of let loose and partied a lot. But during the week, I cooked a lot of food at home, and I ate a lot of organic food, and I enjoyed cooking. So the quality of the food that I ate was really good. I worked out a lot. I exercised. I looked like I was in really good shape. And over this decade of my declining health, I would talk to my friends. I would tell them, hey, something's not right. They would always look at me like I was crazy because I was fit. I lifted weights. I had, pretty good good muscles. I didn't have any fat. And when I try to talk to people, they just kind of looked at me like I was crazy, because everyone knew I ate well and I looked healthy. But a lot of people today, they look healthy, but on the inside, they're dealing with these different symptoms of fatigue and just not sleeping well, not thinking well. And I want to help you understand why this is happening to so many people today. So literally, it was about a decade into this downward decline in my health. I was at a bar and I bumped into an old friend I hadn't seen in a couple of years. And we were catching up. And it turns out she had a lot of the same symptoms that I had. She was tired all the time and digestive issues. Her sleep wasn't good. She had some brain fog. She was dealing with her just kind of some acne on her face, some skin issues and stuff. And she shared with me how she went to see this integrative medicine doctor and how he tested her hormones, her vitamin levels, minerals, all these different things I was not even aware of at the time. And so I said, I got to see this doctor. This sounds like somebody that can help me figure out what's going on here. So I made an appointment. I went in and he actually sat down with me for 2 hours. He asked me a ton of different questions. By the time we got done with him asking me all these questions, he said, I think you have Lyme disease. And I was like, Lyme disease? I'd been living in DC at this point for 10 years. And I would go camping once in a while. I grew up in the country, but I never once found a tick on me. So I didn't think I had Lyme disease, but he took a bunch of my blood. He took saliva. He took urine. He took some other things. And about 2 weeks later, I came in and he reviewed my tests with me. And it turns out I came back positive. I had Lyme disease. I had what's called co-infections. So ticks carry other things besides Lyme disease. So I had Bartonella, Babesia. I also found out that I had Candida, which is a fungal overgrowth in the intestines. I had dysbiosis, which is it's an imbalance of bacteria. And I had very low vitamin levels. I had low hormone levels. I had low mineral levels, high levels of mercury. And I was actually kind of relieved when this happened because A, I wasn't crazy. And B, now I knew what I had so I could address it. And that day I walked out of the doctor's office with $1,200 in supplements and 2 prescriptions. So he gave me a prescription for an antifungal and he gave me a prescription for an antibiotic. So he said, start on the antifungal, do that for a week. He told me when to take these supplements. And he said, after a week, I'll start on antibiotics. And I figured I'd be all better in a month or two. I figure with all these supplements, that'll address the vitamin deficiencies and the hormones and my gut health and all that. And I figured with the antifungal, that would take out the Candida and the antibiotic would take out the Lyme. But I ended up from there, I got sicker than I ever had been because I had what's called a Herxheimer reaction. So when you kill a bunch of pathogens in your body, such as Lyme disease, those bacteria actually are harboring a lot of other toxins. And so you get this flood of toxins in your body and it just overwhelms your immune system and it causes what's called a Herxheimer reaction. And so I went through that. And over the next 6 months, he had me rotating on different antibiotics. I was on 3 different antibiotics 3 times a day. I was going in to see him once a week, doing tons of blood tests. And a month into it, I continued to feel worse and worse. And every now and then I'd have a week where I would start to feel better and I'd go back in, he'd give me new antibiotics, and then I'd feel bad again. So this went on for six months. My starting weight at the beginning of this was 175 pounds. And 6 months into it, my weight was down to 140 pounds. So I looked completely emaciated. I'm back to 175 pounds. I've been at like a pretty solid 175 for a good part of my adult life, but I was completely emaciated. My neurological symptoms got far worse. I had bad anxiety. I was depressed. I was in like a really dark place because I had done so many things. I'd spent so much money at this point. I was in more than 20 grand between the doctor bills, because Lyme specialists aren't covered by insurance. If I submitted the bills, I got reimbursed like 10% or something pathetic. But between the doctor bills, the blood test, the supplements, I was doing other therapies like acupuncture and hyperbaric oxygen, and I did like glutathione injections. I did all these different things. None of it got me better. It got me worse. So during this time, I was very frustrated. I was doing a lot of research. I was doing different diets too. So I thought at one point maybe meat's bad. So I cut out meat. I went vegetarian, and I was trying everything I could. And it was about 6 months into it, I came across this guy, Dr. Jack Cruz. And I had read so many things at this point, but when I came across this guy's website, I knew that he was different than anyone else I came across. And his focus is on quantum biology, and he was talking about light, water, and magnetism. So last week in the show I went really deep on quantum biology, light, water, and magnetism. I'm not going to get as scientific or as technically deep in the show. I really want to help you understand what caused me to get sick, and also what caused me to get better. Because so many people today are struggling with these mystery illnesses where sometimes they don't look good, but sometimes they do look good, but they don't feel good. And a lot of doctors just do not have any answers for these different illnesses. But I came across this site. I knew this guy was different. He had a totally different angle. He wasn't talking diet. He wasn't talking exercise. He wasn't talking about the latest supplement or immunotherapy. And one of the first blogs of his that I read, well, one was about leptin. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But the second blog I read was about cold thermogenesis. And cold thermogenesis is doing ice baths. And at the time, I grew up in upstate New York. By the time I graduated college, I was so sick of the cold. I wanted to get away from it. So I moved down to DC, and DC had much milder winters than New York, and had longer summers. It was a lot sunnier. So it was a much more pleasant environment for someone who dislikes the cold. So when I heard about this, I was a little bit scared because I hated the cold, but at the same time, I was so desperate. I was willing to try anything. And he has this forum on his website, and there were a lot of other people who had been doing this cold thermogenesis. They had great results from it. So I said, I'm going to do it. I don't care. And within 2 weeks, I was doing full body submersion. I used the bathtub in my house. And in the beginning, I would make these big blocks of ice, or just use like Glad Tupperware containers. And living in Virginia, I think the coldest the water would come out of the tap was like at 68 or something. So I would make these big blocks of ice, and I would get the water down into the 50s. And I was doing this like about 5 nights a week. I worked up to 30 minutes. And within 2 weeks of doing these ice baths, I was feeling better than I had in many, many months. But all this time, I just kept on reading this blog. And the blog was super technical. It really went in depth into the science of quantum biology. My brain fog was still kind of bad. So I had a challenging time kind of figuring out what this guy was talking about. But at the same time, I was fascinated by it. I kept on reading about it. I kept on learning about it. One of the next things I did was I was vegetarian at the time. And when I was vegetarian, I never felt satiated. I would eat these big giant plates of food. I was eating brown rice and all these vegetables and like miso soup and stuff. And I would eat all this food, but I was just always hungry. I was constantly hungry, but I never gained a pound eating this food. And a part of the diet that this guy, Dr. Jack Cruz, recommended is called the Epi-Paleo diet. And the focus on the diet is seafood. And the reason for seafood is the highest source of DHA. And DHA is docosahexaenoic acid. And your brain is basically a big blob of fat. It's like 60% fat. The dominant fat in your brain is DHA. It's also in your eyeballs, you have high concentrations of DHA as well. So the reason for DHA is twofold. Number one, it's very good for brain health. And number two, DHA gives your body the ability to absorb more energy from the sun. So it's very electron dense, and photons from the sun interact with electrons. So that dense amount of electrons allows your body to absorb more photons from the sun, which means it allows your body to make more energy from the sunlight that you get. So making that switch from vegetarian, which I hated the diet so much, I craved meat the whole time, but I had it in my head that like meat was the cause of my ills. So eating that diet was just, it felt so good. I finally felt satiated. I started gaining glasses, and the last time I did a show, I didn't want the show to be kind of dark and red like it is now, so I had lights on for the show. But it really kind of affected my sleep that night, because typically at night, once the sun sets, I've got my blue blockers on, and I really limit my exposure to brighter light. So I've got a red light panel on in the background. So sorry about the if it's a little bit hard to see, but my sleep's important to me now, because that was one of the things that I struggled with for many, many years, and fixing my sleep was. I don't think we're going to dig into sleep that much in this episode. We will in a future episode, but I really want you to understand the value of light. And I started learning about light, so I started learning about blue blocking glasses. And at the time in my house, I was exposed to all this light, which was really junk light. And a lot of people are exposed to junk light today. So that's what I dealt with. The way I turned that around, I did a lot of cold thermogenesis. I really fixed my light environment in my house. I started watching the sunrise, and the value of the sunrise is it sets your circadian rhythm. And your circadian rhythm, it controls a lot of things. At a high level, it controls your body's growth. So your body is regenerating cells all the time. So it's growing new cells, and it's always growing new muscle cells, bone cells, heart cells, brain cells, eye cells. And this growth happens at different rates, but that growth is controlled by your circadian rhythm. So when you have a dysfunctional circadian rhythm, you don't get that same level of regeneration. And I have kind of a famous saying that I coined: when you don't regenerate, you degenerate. So that speeds up aging. Now, the next thing your circadian rhythm controls is metabolism. So that's converting food to energy. And some people with poor metabolism, they'll store that energy, and stored energy is fat. So they gain a lot of weight. Now, I was on the other end of the spectrum. My body just wasn't processing the food. It wasn't storing it. It was basically just going through me. And it wasn't my digestive system was completely messed up. Even though the doctor put me in all these supplements, supposedly to fix my gut, he had me on 3 different antibiotics 3 times a day. Now, 80% of your immune system is in your gut. It's made up by the bacteria in your gut. So when people are taking all these antibiotics, it completely destroys your immune system. It completely wrecks your gut. And when you don't have good diversity in your gut, when you have a lot of uh, when you have a leaky gut, you're never going to be able to get better if you're dealing with a major pathogen because you don't have a functioning immune system. So the other thing I did is, as soon as I started learning all about this, I stopped cold turkey taking my antibiotics. Now this was about 2-3 months into me discovering Jack Cruz, because I was slowly learning as I went. And then the other thing I started doing, I really started to mitigate a lot of the wireless a lot of the wireless radiation in my house. So for example, I had my Wi-Fi router on my desk in my home office. And I had a lot of late nights watching TV without my blue blockers. And that light was what was disrupting my sleep. The reason I couldn't get a good sleep is because I was watching TV late at night. I was a night owl. I was on my phone a lot. I was on my computer doing work or like messing around on the internet late into the night. And that blue light, that disrupted my circadian rhythm. It messed up my sleep. So I started doing all these things. So it was really fixing my light. It was fixing my diet. It was doing cold thermogenesis. The reason cold thermogenesis is so beneficial is it radically shuts down inflammation. It also increases your body's efficiency in energy production. So less inflammation, more energy. It makes you more sensitive to your hormone levels. So what I was dealing with, I had very low hormone levels, one in particular, testosterone. So a lot of men, as we age, they get lower and lower testosterone. Testosterone levels, by the way, they're like 50% lower today than they were just like 40, 50 years ago. So teenagers today have lower levels of testosterone than 60-year-old men, 50, 60-year-old men from like 50 years ago. So it's significantly gone down. A lot of men today, once they hit 40, they have erectile dysfunction because testosterone is so low. Things like Viagra and there's a bunch of other ones. You've probably seen a lot of commercials. There's commercials all the time for like Blue Chew. That's a newer one, but it's affecting a lot of men, and it's driven by blue light, a disrupted circadian rhythm, diet that plays a role as well. But light is really the core driver of all this dysfunction that we're seeing today with different things. So for me, let's go back to my early 30s. I was a night owl, so I had a lot of late nights. That blue light from all the screens I was exposed to, that shut down my body's release of melatonin. You need melatonin to get into a deep restorative sleep. Now, melatonin does a lot of things in addition to regulate your circadian rhythm. It's also one of the most important antioxidants in your body. So melatonin, it's very anti-inflammatory. So I had this blue light exposure. Blue light in itself causes inflammation. It's driving down levels of melatonin, so I didn't have anything to fight that inflammation. Melatonin is also anti-cancer. And if you look at the data on night shift workers, they have a 30 to 40% higher risk of cancers. Because remember, melatonin is anti-cancer, it's anti-tumor. So when you have this chronically disrupted circadian rhythm, when you're exposed to blue light at night because you're working, you're going to have very low levels of melatonin. So you don't have that body's natural defense mechanism to fight off cancer and a lot of this other chronic disease that we have today. So probably my biggest issue was just being a night owl and all this blue light exposure. I was always an early adopter. I was the first of my friends to have an iPhone. As soon as those, I don't know if you remember or not, but when we kind of transitioned from incandescents to energy efficient lights, before we had LEDs, we had these like kind of curly fluorescent light bulbs, and you'd turn them on. It would take like 30 seconds for them to warm up. But I put those in my house as soon as they came out because I was all about energy efficiency, which is complete bullshit. But so I had those. I had a Wi-Fi booster in my house because my internet wasn't fast enough. I wanted faster internet. So I got a Wi-Fi booster. My sleep was horrible. So I downloaded this phone app that kind of tracks your sleep, and you're supposed to have the phone for this app. You keep the phone on your pillow so it can detect how much you're moving around at night. But your phone puts off radiation. So I had this source of radiation right next to my head at night. Wireless radiation also reduces your melatonin levels. So I had this blue light exposure at night, which messed up my melatonin. And then throughout the night, I had this phone right next to my head, radiating my head because I couldn't sleep, which made my sleep even worse. So that was a big no-no. I spent 90% of my existence indoors. I worked a lot. If I went outside, I was dressed, I was covered up for the most part. When I wasn't covered up, it was a couple times a year I went to the beach, and my wife at the time was always slathering me with sunscreen. So I was at the beach, finally getting some vitamin D, but then I put sunscreen on. So I blocked a lot of that UV light that I would be getting from the sun. And I'd still burn. But trying to think what else I did wrong. I had for many years I had two phones. I had my personal phone, and then I had a work phone because I worked for a federal contractor, and the iPhone was not considered secure at the time. BlackBerry was considered secure. So I had a BlackBerry phone for work, and I would walk around with two phones, one in each front pocket, one on each side. And for many years, my ex-wife and I, we tried to conceive. So I had my swimmers tested on 3-4 occasions. I always had a low count. I had poor motility, meaning they would just swim in circles. They couldn't like go in a straight line. And that's because I was frying my nuts with these two phones in my front pockets. So once I started to learn about all this, I made a lot of radical changes. So I stopped carrying the phone in my pocket. If I was walking, I would just carry them in my hand so they weren't on my person. I swapped out the light bulbs in my house. I went back to incandescent light bulbs. I got a timer for my Wi-Fi, so I was turning the Wi-Fi off at night. I started getting a lot more sun. And then with that sun, so I was watching the sunrise, so I fixed my circadian rhythm. I was getting more sun during the day, so I was helping my body make vitamin D. But also, as I was helping, remember, I had a very bad brain fog. I had anxiety, depression. Those anxiety and depression, when a lot of people today, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but for a lot of people, for example, with depression, they really have nothing to be depressed about. A lot of people with anxiety don't have anything real to have anxiety about. And a lot of it is driven by imbalanced neurotransmitters. So things like dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, not enough beta endorphins. So all these things are made from UV light. So I was getting all this sun exposure, and it really helped to balance out my neurotransmitters. My hormones started coming back online. One of the other treatments I did when I had Lyme was before I started having a lot of issues, I used to do yoga, and there was this woman who would come to the development where I lived. There was a clubhouse. She would teach yoga, so I went to her for many years. She eventually opened up her studio, and so I would do yoga with her. And once I was being treated for Lyme and I had low energy, I would go to her for Thai massage. And at this point, her and her boyfriend opened up this CrossFit gym with a yoga studio in the back. So when I would go to get the massage, I had to walk through this CrossFit gym. And it was so intimidating at the time because my weight went down to 140 pounds. So I'm this little skinny dude with zero muscle mass. And I'm walking through this gym with all these people, very attractive people, very ripped, very cut, doing these crazy workouts. So I would just kind of look with my head down, walking through this gym to get to the back and do this Thai massage. But once I started doing this cold thermogenesis, my weight came back on pretty rapidly. And within like a 3-month period, my weight, so I put on a bunch of weight, my energy started getting better. And a buddy of mine had been telling me for years to do CrossFit. He got into CrossFit. He's like, you got to do CrossFit, dude. I'm just like, there's no friggin' way. I've got like no energy. And from doing cold thermogenesis and making these other changes, I was putting weight back on. My energy was improving by the week. And so one day I said, you know what, I'm going to do CrossFit. So I joined the CrossFit gym, the one I was embarrassed to walk through. And within a couple months, my weight was 185 pounds. I was the most jacked I ever was in my life. And I worked in college. I started working out, and I'm a naturally kind of thin guy. And from working out, I got pretty fit. I had good muscle mass, but I wasn't doing these other things that I was doing now. So literally 20 years later, after college, when my testosterone levels should be much lower, I was doing CrossFit and I got bigger than I ever got, working out less than I did in college. I was doing like 3 CrossFit workouts a week or something. But I share all that just to let you know, for those of you who are struggling, who've tried a lot of different things, and maybe you eat well, maybe you exercise, and you're doing all this, the so-called right things, and you're chasing supplements, you're not getting the results you want. For so many people today, this is the missing link. And we've got this huge disconnect from nature. Our modern lives have pulled us away from what we evolved to for, or not evolved to, because humans haven't really changed much in the past hundreds, thousands of years, but to the conditions of existence, to the way that people lived for hundreds of thousands of years, connected to the earth. They were spent a lot of time outside. They were either bare feet or they had leather shoes, and you can ground through leather. So they were very connected to the earth. The food they ate was local to them. It wasn't shipped from 1,000 miles away. The light they were exposed to at night was firelight. So there was no blue or green in that firelight to disrupt circadian rhythm. People were out. They had physically demanding jobs that were outside. So they were not in a gym, not in some crappy gym under horrible lighting, but they were very connected to nature. When it was dark out, maybe they were up for a little bit around the campfire or with candles, but then they were sleeping when it was dark and they were awake during the day. And today we've completely flipped that on its head. We spend 90% of our time indoors under these fake lights that have a very narrow band of the spectrum that we get from the sun. The spectrum we get from the sun is from about 250 nanometers to 3,000 nanometers. The spectrum that we get from LED lights is from 400 to 700 nanometers. So it's a very small part of that. And it's not balanced the way the light is from the sun, because you have in all this light that we're exposed to today. Most of that is blue light. And I think I said this in the beginning, but blue light, it's the junk food of light. When you get it from the sun, it's balanced. It's like when you eat an apple, there's sugar in that apple, but it's balanced with fiber and there's other vitamins and stuff. But when you just drink that apple juice, maybe you're getting a few vitamins from that, but you're getting mostly sugar, and that's going to cause a blood sugar spike. And if you just drink apple juice, that can cause a lot of issues for a lot of people, but you're not getting the same benefits of just going out and eating the apple. And that's the same thing with the light that people are exposed to today. It's a very tiny piece of that spectrum that we get from the sun. And blue light, when it's not balanced with red and infrared, it causes inflammation on its own. It penetrates deeper than UV light. So UV light, most people know that you can get too much UV light that causes inflammation, and that inflammation comes in the form of a sunburn. And if you're outside, let's say it's been winter, and then you get a nice day and you go outside all day, or the higher intensity UV light. But if you work your way up to it, if you get on the first day, you get an hour and you watch the sunrise, you get some of that morning light. And over the course of a week or two, you build up to it. You can stay outside in the sunlight and you're not going to get burned, especially if you're eating a healthy diet. Now, if you're eating a lot of seed oils, if you're eating a lot of junk food, you're going to burn very easily because that weakens your cell membranes. But if you're eating a healthy diet, if you're eating a lot of seafood, you're going to be able to build what's called a solar callus. You're going to be able to be in the sun all day. You're not going to get burned. You'll get a nice tan. If you're very of like Irish or Scottish descent, probably never get a tan, but you're not going to burn. You'll get red, but you'll be able to handle the sun. But you're going to increase your vitamin D. You're going to make these different hormones and peptides that your body needs. You're going to have better balanced dose alpha MSH. Now, the other thing that really caused me to get sick was from my lack of sun exposure. I also had very low alpha MSH. So alpha MSH is alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone that makes melanin, which gives you that pigment in your skin when you get a tan. So people who are like black or brown skin, they're highly melanated in their skin already. That's you. You should be getting more sunlight, because the whiter you are, the less sunlight that you need. But other things that alpha MSH does, it's very protective of your gut line. So I had leaky gut. So low alpha MSH plus, drinking to excess on the weekends, that messed up my gut too. But low alpha MSH, that was one of the drivers for my leaky gut. Another reason my sleep was so horrible is because I had low ADH, antidiuretic hormone. So I'd have to get up 3-4 times during the night to pee. Once I started getting more sun, that wasn't an issue. Alpha MSH also detoxifies heavy metals. That's the reason I had mercury toxicity. I had a lot of fillings from mercury too. But when your immune system is working the way it is, you're able to detox that low alpha MSH. So that was a big missing link. But getting that sun exposure created all these different hormones. It balanced out my hormones. It created a lot of different peptides and proteins in my body to help it thrive, to help it be healthy again. So hopefully this is all making sense. If this is totally new to you and you're kind of curious how you can get started, the first thing I want you to do is go out in the morning and watch the sunrise. And if you want a list of my top 9 biohacks that I used, these are all the things I learned from Dr. Cruz that I did to really turn my health around. You can get them on my website, nathanwalz.com/mitochondriac. And if you go there, put in your email, you'll get that list of my top 9 biohacks. You don't have to do all 9 of them. Just get started with watching the sunrise, maybe 1 or 2 other things. Just pick something that resonates with you. Get started with that. As you feel the benefits, you can add on additional things. And from the show I did last week, I've had a handful of people reach out saying, I've been watching the sunrise. And a lot of people, they would just say, hey, I started watching the sunrise. And I responded, how's it going? You feeling anything? Not really sure, but it was enjoyable. I hadn't watched the sunrise in years, and it felt good watching the sunrise. And then I've had a couple people since respond, be like, I'm able to fall asleep easier at night, or I'm sleeping longer than I have in the past. And it's not like going from like 4 hours of sleep to 7 hours of sleep. It's going from, maybe 6 hours to 7 hours, for example. So it's not going to fix everything overnight, but as you start to do this, as you make this a permanent part of your life, the benefits are going to get more and more over time. So I want to share a case study with one of my clients, and so I had this client. We'll call her Pat, but she was 57 years old at the time. When she came to me, she was dealing with both muscle and nerve pain. She had really bad brain fog. It was hard for her to focus. She had low energy. She had poor emotional control. She was always just very emotional. She had a blood sugar imbalance, and she'd eat lunch and then feel very tired. It just didn't have a lot of motivation to do the stuff she wanted to do in life. So we started working, and her top goals, she wanted to lose 30 pounds. She wanted to increase her energy. She wanted to fix her brain fog. She didn't like just being foggy all the time. And then the other goals, I always have people come up with it with the top three, but she came up with some other goals. She wanted to reduce pain. At the time, she didn't really feel that she could eliminate the pain because she had dealt with it for so long. She said, I'd just be happy reducing the pain at this point. She wanted to be healthy for her children. So as she aged, she can be there for her children. She wanted balanced blood sugar, and she wanted to feel emotionally balanced. So we got to work, and I gave her a number of recommendations, and had her start a number of new practices. The first one was watching the sunrise. And I also encouraged her to take sun breaks. So a lot of us have worked with smokers. Maybe you're a smoker. But one thing about smokers is smokers can always find time for a cigarette break. So I want you to take that and apply that to you, not the smoking part, but always being able to find the time for a sun break. And if you can go out 3-4 times during your day and get 5-10 minutes of sun, that's gonna make a big difference. And then on your days off, you want to maximize on getting as much sun as you can. So I had her do that. I put her on some very specific protocols to help her heal her gut. She worked on cold adaptation. She worked all the way up to doing full body submersion. She started wearing blue blocking glasses. We did some subconscious reprogramming for her self-image. She had a lot of limiting beliefs. I put her on the leptin RX. So leptin, I said I was going to discuss that. I didn't. So leptin is your master hormone. And when you have chronic inflammation, when you have a chronically disrupted circadian rhythm, that causes this thing called leptin resistance. And a lot of people know what insulin resistance is. When you become insulin resistant, that causes type 2 diabetes. And a lot of people who are pre-diabetic, they're kind of moving in that direction. They're not quite there yet. They're not quite there yet. But a lot of people with these conditions of diabetes and pre-diabetes are overweight. Some are obese. Some are accumulate weight each year. Each year they add a couple more pounds. And a big driver of that is leptin resistance. So people will become leptin resistant 5 to 7 years before they become insulin resistant. And leptin resistance shows up a couple different ways. The main way it shows up is with obesity, because it controls your body's energy expenditure. So you have a leptin receptor, it's in your hypothalamus, and that tells your brain the status of your energy reserves. Leptin controls ghrelin, that's your hunger hormone. But when you're leptin resistant, your body doesn't know the status of its energy reserves. So essentially, it's like having a broken gas gauge on your car. And if you have a broken gas gauge on your car, you don't want to run out of gas. So you're always going to be filling your car up with gas so you don't run out. My first car, by the way, had a broken gas gauge. It was a Volkswagen Rabbit. And this is pre-cell phone when I had this car. I didn't have a lot of money. I was in high school. So I didn't have the luxury of always filling up my car. When I would put gas in it, it was like $5 at a time or something. And I actually ran out of gas 3 times. And I lived in a rural area. Anyway, when you're leptin resistant, it's like having a broken gas gauge on your car. So your body doesn't know the energy, the status of your energy reserves. So it keeps on adding those reserves in the form of fat. Another way it shows up is leptin modulates your immune system. So for me, that was an issue. In leptin resistance, there's a spectrum. So for some people, they gain a lot of weight. Some people can't gain any weight. So that did happen for me once I got worse and worse from the Lyme treatment I was on. But the way it showed up for me first, and the way it shows up for a lot of people today, is through autoimmunity. So you have a runaway immune system because leptin also controls your immunity. Leptin also controls fecundity. So my ex-wife and I, we tried to conceive for 6 years. I already shared that I had a low sperm count and poor motility. And the other part of the equation wasn't able to conceive even with in vitro. That was the way leptin resistance showed up for her. Leptin also controls bone regeneration, tendon and ligament regeneration. We're also seeing today sky-high amounts of people getting knee meniscus tears or rotator cuff tears. But a lot of people are pulling and tearing different tendons, osteoporosis. These are all driven by leptin resistance. And leptin resistance, again, so is caused from chronic inflammation, which I had from my lifestyle, and a disrupted circadian rhythm. So until you fix those things, I think I shared a case study last week of a client who cut out all the junk in their diet, was eating very clean, no sugar, no gluten. 3 weeks, didn't lose a pound. Couldn't figure out why. Well, he didn't watch the sunrise. He didn't swap out the shitty light bulbs in his house. And until you address leptin resistance, it's going to be very hard to lose weight or to fix an autoimmune issue or to conceive and get pregnant. So there's, watching the sunrise is very important for that. Cold exposure is very important for that. And then eating a high protein breakfast is very important for that. So back to this case study, Pat. So I had her do the leptin RX. We worked on emotional release. She was holding on to a lot of emotional baggage. She did some intermittent fasting. I taught her high value versus low value dopamine. A lot of people today, they get their dopamine hits from, it's very low value or things like Facebook likes or gambling or just scrolling, binge watching, eating junk food, watching porn. All these different things are very low effort dopamine. But when you actually work for your dopamine, that builds it in a healthy way, and that really improves your thinking, your focus, by just adjusting how you get your dopamine. Thiamine supplementation. A lot of people with fibromyalgia are very low in thiamine. Let's see, I had her put her Wi-Fi on a plug-in timer. We worked on breath work, mouth taping, which is a very good sleep hack. Had her ease into exercise. She had a lot of extra weight, so I didn't want her doing anything too strenuous. So I really had her focus a lot on walking and some light exercise. So after the end of her working with me for 90 days, these are her results. Her number one goal, lose 30 pounds. Oh, the other thing, just saw one of my notes here. The other thing was she was a night shift worker, and she worked night shift. It was like 2-3 days a week. The rest was like a normal shift. And the whole time we're working together, I'm telling her, I'm like, if you really got to stop working night shift, because until you fix your circadian rhythm, all these other things are going to be a huge challenge. She's like, yeah, I really hate night shift, but the money is so good. I make double the money working night shift as the day shift. And I need the money. And I get that, we all need to make our money. So she continued working night shift throughout the time we worked together. So her number one goal, lose 30 pounds. She lost 8 pounds. Okay. That was a bit of a disappointment. But it wasn't surprising either, due to the night shift. And with being leptin resistant, you can't fix your circadian rhythm if you're working a night shift. Her next goal, to increase energy. She felt much more energetic overall. Her brain fog, that was number 3. She felt much more clear overall. Her fibromyalgia was under control with mild symptoms. So got much better. Faster recovery from working night shift and just long work shifts in general. Her sleep improved. She's able to quiet her mind from racing thoughts. She's able to feel confident in going forward with her health because she has the tools that she needs. She knows how to manage it. In general, she felt more motivated in life and happier, and she got rid of her food cravings. So 2 months after, I just sent her an email being like, hey, how things going? She had some very stressful life events that happened. She fell off track. She had some fibromyalgia flare-ups, and her mood was down. She was feeling down. So I just reviewed all the stuff, the things we worked on, a lot of the key things like getting back to sunrise, getting back to cold, and she committed to getting back on track. 2 months later, I get an email from her that she quit her night shift and she lost another 15 pounds since the last time we spoke. She was feeling great, and her fibromyalgia was back under control with very mild symptoms. 6 weeks later, I get an email from her to let me know that she had a recent doctor's appointment. The doctor looked at her blood work, and he said, compared to a year ago, you're doing so much better. Said, I don't know what you're doing, but keep on doing. So all we're talking about here are very simple lifestyle changes. It's simple, but not easy. And where a lot of people get hung up on this is maybe you have something going on right now that's at the time of sunrise. And for some people, it's not possible to make changes in their lifestyle, but or just due to a job or whatever. But a lot of these things are in your control, and it may not be easy to make these changes, but the practice itself is very simple. So if you've been struggling with any of these symptoms I've talked about, get the Biohacks. If you would like a little more hand-holding and structured support, I do offer one-on-one coaching. So there's also a link on my website where you can schedule a time for us to talk. So that's if you're very serious. I also have a course. So my video course, it covers a lot of the protocols, the standard protocols I help my clients with. And that'll really get you started too. So you've got a couple different options if what I've shared with you resonates with you. And if you want to learn more and just dip your toe in. But if you're kind of curious, like I said, get started with the sunrise. Find one or two other things from the top 9 biohacks. That's at nathanwalz.com/mitochondriac. And just make this a permanent part of your life. This isn't something that you just try out and then you go back to your old life. Because if you go back to your old life, guess what? The symptoms that went away, they're going to come back. To this day, I still do all these things. And it keeps me feeling good. It's kept me symptom free. And I'll never go back to how it was. For many, many years, I used to work with this guy who was a morning bird, and he used to drive me up the wall because I could not imagine getting up early. And a lot of people I talk with that are interested in this, they've been a night owl for 20, 30, 40 years, and they can't imagine going to bed earlier. But trust me, your body will readapt. It might take some time, but once you switch to the way your body is meant to work, once you realign yourself with nature, your body will do amazing things. Your thinking will get so much better. You'll feel so much better. You'll look so much better. You'll live a much longer life. So get started. Do these things. I hope you learned something of value. I hope you put it to use to help yourself. And I'll be back next week, and we'll talk about more of this stuff, and we'll continue to go down the quantum biology rabbit hole.
Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.